G'day everyone, I'm AzureBlaze, and welcome to my thoughts on Kirby, Tilt and Tumble, or as it sounds like on the Game Boy, Kirby, Tilt and Tumble! Instead of moving on to Kirby Superstar, where I would have been up to, I decided that before I leave the Game Boy / Game Boy Color era for Kirby, that it may be fun to cover this game. Released in 2001 exclusively on the Color, this game utilizes a gyro sensor built into the cartridge, and plays quite differently to a traditional Kirby game. Instead of playing like a 2D platformer with running and jumping like 2D platformers generally have, it plays from a top-down perspective and Kirby rolls around. To control Kirby, the player must tilt the device they are using in the direction they want Kirby to move, and by flicking the device, the player can make Kirby jump, which is nice and simple. Whilst I imagine the physical side of this control method worked well enough on the Game Boy Color, on the Switch, with the Joy-Con attached, it feels like I'm gonna break something, as the connection between each Joy-Con and the tablet flexes and moves as you play. I don't think anything's gonna break. I'm pretty sure nothing's gonna break, however, it kind of feels a little bit iffy because there's moving parts, and I don't know, it's just kind of iffy to play. Perhaps the Switch Lite's single-piece body and less weight would work better for this type of game. I'm not sure, I don't have a Switch Lite. On Kirby's side of the gameplay, however, I think it controls quite well for a game of its age that implements gyro control. I'm not sure how the game controlled specifically on the Game Boy Color, I'd imagine it was similar, or if they made any improvements when adding it to NSO. However, at the very least on the Switch, with the much newer gyro sensors compared to the Game Boy Color's cartridge gyro sensor, it works quite well. Kirby feels quite responsive to control, and 5 movements tilting the Switch at different angles works fairly smoothly. I did try using the Pro Controller at one point, and I do not know whether it was because I did not have the screen tilting, or if the gyro is more sensitive or something. However, I did not feel I could get it to control correctly. It felt as if no matter how little I tilted the controller, Kirby would roll much further than I wanted him to, oftentimes falling off an edge. I ended up going back to tilting the entire console, as it felt more natural to control. The game was built around it, and it seems to work that way a lot better in my opinion. In terms of presentation, the music is the normal Kirby affair, fun and bubbly, as I've come to expect from the Kirby series. As I've said in the past, I'm not a big person who can talk about music and stuff like that. I either like music or don't like music generally. I don't have much else to say, As for the visuals, however, this game keeps up with Kirby's ongoing trend of continuing to look great, despite being on weaker hardware. The sprite work is crisp and clear, with the designs of the entities being clean and easy to identify. The animations are lively and expressive and fit well on the smaller sprites. Levels are surprisingly detailed, despite using simplistic designs and are distinguishable from each other. Level themes, whilst somewhat generic in the current day, are at least varied in look, which is nice. This is yet another Kirby game that I feel utilizes the handheld well and looks great. When it comes to some of the levels I found interesting, level 2-1 was the first to play with the idea of rolling under grates. I think it was the first, pretty sure it was the first. This is done in order to reach otherwise unobtainable sections of the stage. All Kirby does is drop down one of the holes, moves around underneath, and then when the device is flicked up, Kirby can jump out of any hole that's positioned directly above him. I think this is a neat gimmick for the stage, I guess, that takes the top-down perspective and utilizes it in an interesting way. 2-3 has the player launching from cloud to cloud high up in the sky. Oftentimes the clouds will travel along tracks or spin around spinners and stuff, and correct timing is required in order to land on another cloud without falling, which is funny because Kirby can generally fly, and in this game he can only fly at specific parts when you have these like fly balloons that give you like a timer of how long you can fly. And then with 2-3 as well, the sunset like orange color scheme helps this one stand out a lot in my opinion. And then 8-3 is one that I remember quite well because it had a flying section at the end that I found it a little bit frustrating to get past before Kirby ran out of his little flight timer that he has. In the end, I found like I could go through a second section which had like a lot of one-ups and stuff, which tells me it was meant to be like a secret section and stuff like that. I actually found that easier because at least I managed to get to the end that way, and instead of going the main way, which I simply couldn't do. I could not work it out for ages. It got pretty frustrating, to be honest. And then that side way, I found it, and I was like, oh, that's better. I'm gonna go this way. And then plenty of ideas appear throughout the rest of the game as well, including like half pipes that you can roll up and down, conveyors that will like push you around, robots that can create paths and stuff like that, and then like ocean currents that will like push you back down to the bottom of the screen, and if you stay in there too long you'll sink. I think there's some sand that's like that as well. And it changes up how the levels are played, and it's much appreciated. And like these concepts and all the concepts I talked about in those 3 levels, they appear in various stages of the game, and yeah, they usually make a fun and interesting like difference for a lot of the stages, despite the fact that they appear multiple times. Hi, hello, AzureBlaze here. I forgot to discuss 2 things when going around this. I sort of ended it and forgot to discuss these. The first being the boss battles. They're quite fun. They use some of the stage mechanics in order for Kirby to hit the enemy generally on top in an eye, or like he fires stuff out of his mouth at Cracker, placing things down across the screen. Kind of looks like Space Invaders a little bit. And then like DDD's boss is quite interesting. The player fires Kirby out of a cannon to hit him. It's kind of interesting. I don't know how it relates to the rest of the mechanics that much. However, it's kind of interesting, and there's like a little fun cutscene afterwards as well. And the other thing is the story, which, to be honest, I did not pay attention to, nor did I get like all the stars, like the red stars, I think, that you need to get, which probably unlocks like a special final boss, knowing the Kirby series. Yeah, I didn't do any of that sort of stuff either. Otherwise, though, there's not much else to say about it. I didn't really pay attention to it. Yeah, anyway, back to past me. After all is said and done, however, despite some frustrations, especially in 8-3, I was surprised at how enjoyable the game was overall. It's a unique little game from the Game Boy Color with a good amount of fun to have. And I think it'd be interesting to see what they could come up with if I were to make a sequel of the game in the current day. Maybe for the Switch 2 or something like that. I don't know, I think that'd be interesting. I will be back on Mario next time for the marathon, with his first Game Boy adventure with Super Mario Land. Me covering this game doesn't mean I'll be doing spin-offs for everything. I might do a spin-off here and there to simply break things up if I need to catch up on stuff, because they're generally a bit smaller and all that sort of thing. Another thing is the marathon will probably be moving to every 2 months instead of 1, which is upsetting even to me. I'm simply struggling to get these, even though they're small videos. They do take a fair amount of my time, and I have a lot of time that's being taken up by a lot of other things as well. And a lot of the time, I simply push these ones to the side and end up rushing to the finish at the end. And I think it'd be nice to sort of delegate a little bit more time over 2 months. I understand that these are small videos, and I should be able to get them out once per month. I used to do this once a week, and now I can't seem to do that either. I'm simply running out of time. However, yeah, it'll probably be every 2 months, simply delegate it properly. Hopefully I can get other things out on the months that they're not out as well. I'm planning things and hoping. However, despite all that, I hope everybody enjoyed this episode of my thoughts on the Kirby Mario Marathon. As I said, I'll be back with Super Mario Land next time. Cheers, everyone.